It's a song called I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. I didn't realize until I listened to the Casting Crowns version on this Christmas CD my mom had given me of like, it doesn't kind of stay nice and sweet. It actually gets really dark really quickly. Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. Years ago, my mom had gotten me a Christmas CD. I think it was like a stocking stuffer or something like this. And it was from a Christian band called Casting Crowns. And so I listened to that a bunch. I really actually ended up liking it a lot. One of the songs that was on this Christmas album is a song I'd heard of, and I heard the beginning of it, but I never ever paid attention to. It's a song called I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. And yeah, you know, it starts out, I heard the bells on Christmas Day, the old familiar carols play, of wild and sweet, the words repeat, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I'm like, oh, nice song. Second verse, kind of similar. I thought of how as day had come, the belfries of Christendom, and rolled along, the unbroken song, peace on earth, goodwill to men. Just nice. The third stanza, kind of like that, just like things are happening. Then from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound, the carols drowned, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And it gets even worse. And I realized, what is happening? What is this song all about? Well, it turns out this song was written in 1863 by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. If you know Longfellow, right? He was a poet, literary critic and whatnot. It was written by him on December 25th, 1863. Longfellow's life was marked by some Christian faith. And also, especially if you're living at a certain time in a certain culture, a certain country, you're going to be influenced, of course, by Christian influences, even if you're not like a full-fledged Christian. Longfellow was in that camp of like, yeah, he had faith to some degree, but Longfellow also had pain and suffering mark his life. He was married to his wife, who they had 6 children together. The youngest of these children had died. His wife, she also perished in a fire, just horrible, you might say like even freak accident, where her dress caught on fire. And even though Longfellow did everything he could to put out the fire on her dress by using garments, even using his own body to try to snuff out the flames, she died. Longfellow himself was burned so badly that he never recovered. He never shaved again, and he had this very, very long beard because of the fact of the scars that he had gotten when he tried to save his wife's life, but was unable to. Their oldest son, his name was Charlie. Charlie was part of the Union Army, fighting against the Confederate Army in the Civil War. The word came back to Longfellow that Charlie, his oldest son, had been shot in the face. Turned out that wasn't the case. He was shot in the chest, and the bullet barely missed his spinal cord, barely missing, paralyzing him. And so all this tragedy, here's this widower, his son who had been shot in the war, who knew all of the things happening, the devastating things happening in the Civil War, the pain, the number of lives that were just being lost and just in his own grief. He's sitting in his home on December 25th, 1863, and he hears the bells of the local church ringing. And so, yeah, he writes the words, heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, wild and sweet, the words repeat, of peace on earth, goodwill to men, because that's the message, right? Peace on earth, goodwill to men. Great, that's the story. That's the children's version of the story. And that's why this song is so profound, because the children's version of this story stops there. It stops with, this is wild and sweet, peace on earth, goodwill to men. Wonderful. But Longfellow, he knew that there wasn't just peace on earth. He knew that there was violence on earth, there was ugliness on earth. And so he goes on to write, not only after that, each black accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, goes on the next verse says, it was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the houses born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. How many houses, they don't have their sons anymore. They've been ripped apart because of this Civil War. The second to last verse is the second to last most important verse, I think, or second most important verse. It says, and in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. For hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. This is just so raw. As I said, it's so raw and so honest. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And if the song ended there, you'd have a poem of a man who'd been broken, right? If the song ended there, you'd have the poem of a man who, like, I heard the message is a peace on earth and goodwill to men. But then the reality of life is that that's not true. The reality of life is that hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. But that's not the last verse. The last verse shows that Longfellow is like us. We've heard the truth of peace on earth, goodwill to men, but we also live the truth that hate is strong and mocks the song. And so they have the last stanza that he writes. And then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor does he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. This is actually the message of Christianity. The message of Christmas is this, is that this world is broken, that this world is so full of suffering and pain and hate and evil. But God is not dead, and he does not sleep. That in fact, the Christian message is that God, the divine word, leaped like a warrior to this earth, and he allowed the brokenness and the hate and the evil and death to overwhelm him so as to transform it, so as to conquer the evil and the hate and the violence and the death, to transform it so that you and I, in the midst of a world that is broken, in the midst of the world where bells still ring, even though cannons still boom, that we can still have hope, that we can still ring those bells in the midst of war, that we can still ring those bells in the midst of grief, that we can still ring those bells when we've been broken. Because we know this is true. Christmas reminds us that God is not dead, nor does he sleep. So even in the midst of grief, we worship him. In the midst of grief, we pray. In the midst of grief, we love each other. In the midst of grief, we ring those bells because we know the truth. The truth is, God has become one of us. He is not dead. He does not sleep. And he is near. And he loves you. For all of us here at Ascension Presents, God bless and Merry Christmas.